I never thought I'd end up sleeping on a bench in Central Park, clutching a garbage bag full of my life like some forgotten relic from a bad 80s movie. My son, Ethan God, even saying his name now tastes like battery acid, had the nerve to send a courier with the eviction notice, monogrammed on Daddy's old stationery, as if that made it classy.
Mom.
It's time you downsized, the note read, followed by a winky emoji that hit harder than any fist. But the real gut punch? He threw a party that same night, right there in the family brownstone on the Upper East Side, to toast his shiny new $55 million inheritance. I could hear the bass thumping from the street, laughter spilling out like champagne bubbles, while I shivered under a threadbare blanket, wondering how the boy I'd raised on PB&J and bedtime stories about Honest Abe Lincoln had turned into this Wall Street shark. It wasn't just the money. Ethan had always been ambitious. The kind of kid who sold lemonade stands for profit margins and debated ethics in his high school Model UN just to win. But this was surgical. Daddy, my husband, Richard Hargrove, the steel magnate who'd built an empire on Rust Belt factories and backroom deals, had passed 6 months ago from a sudden heart attack that the coroner chalked up to too many Scotch neat and not enough greens. I'd been by his side, holding his hand as the monitors flatlined, whispering promises I couldn't keep. Ethan was in London then, closing a deal, he said. Convenient. The will reading came a week later, in Daddy's mahogany-paneled study that smelled like cigars and regret. The lawyer, a weasel-faced prick named Harlan who'd golfed with Daddy at Augusta, cleared his throat and read out the terms. Everything to Ethan. The brownstone. The Hamptons beach house. The offshore accounts, poof. All mine no more. I got a modest trust fund, enough for a studio in Queens. And a parting line from Ethan. Dad always said you were better at spending than saving. Mom. I didn't contest it.
Not then.
Grief does that. Turns your spine to jelly. But grief fades. And rage is the gift that keeps on giving. That's when I started digging. Late nights in the public library on Fifth Avenue, nursing black coffee and paranoia, scrolling through LexisNexis like a conspiracy theorist on Red Bull. Daddy's death certificate looked clean, but the timestamps on his medical records? Off by hours. And Ethan's alibi? That London flight manifested as a red-eye. But his credit card pinged a bodega on Lex at 2 a.m. The night Daddy coded. Coincidence? In my world, coincidence is just another word for cover-up. The deeper I went, the uglier it got. Daddy hadn't just built an empire, he'd buried bodies under it, metaphorical ones. Mostly. Union busts in the 90s that left families homeless. EPA fines paid off with envelopes of cash. A whistleblower who fell from a scaffold in Pittsburgh. I'd known bits. Played the dutiful wife. Hosted the fundraisers where senators patted my ass and called me the Steel Rose.
But Ethan?
He'd been groomed for it all along. Daddy's golden boy. Interning at the firm while I baked cookies for PDA meetings. And the secret he'd buried deepest? The one that made my blood run cold? It wasn't just fraud. It was me. 25 years ago, during a messy merger, Daddy had cooked the books, falsified safety reports that led to a factory fire in Ohio. 3 workers dead, scorched lungs and melted hard hats. The feds came sniffing, but Daddy pinned it on me. Clara's signature on the approvals, the memo read. I'd signed off in my sleep, half drugged on Valium after fight, trusting him like a fool. He took the heat off himself, and I got probation. Community service scrubbing graffiti in Jersey. My career as an interior designer? Torched. Our marriage? A slow poison from there on. Ethan knew.
Of course he did.
He'd found the files in Daddy's safe last year. Used them as leverage for his promotion to VP. And when Daddy started talking second will equal shares, a clean slate, Ethan didn't hesitate. A pillow over the face in the dead of night. Or maybe something in the scotch. Then the eviction. To erase any loose ends.
Me.
The loose end. The woman who'd borne his sins like a scarlet letter. But here's where the plot twists harder than a Tarantino flick. I didn't just dig. I dealt. Desperation led me to a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen. The kind where ex-cons swap stories over PBR and whispers of off-the-books fixes. That's where I met Victor. A hulking Russian with eyes like chipped ice and a sideline in black market biotech. Body swaps. He grunted over shots of vodka that burned like regret. Experimental. Neural mapping. Full immersion. Like Westworld. But for real meat. Cost? My trust fund. Scraped clean. Plus a favor I'd rather not name. The tech was stolen from some DARPA wet dream. Nanites that rewrite your synapses. Hijack another body's motor functions for 72 hours. Reversible. Mostly. Lethal if you fuck it up. Victor called it the exchange. I called it my ticket in. The swap happened in a warehouse off the Gowanus Canal. Rain hammering the tin roof like God's own migraine. Ethan was passed out in his penthouse after a coke-fueled bender. Easy mark. His dealer on my payroll now. I lay on the cold slab, wires snaking into my veins. Victor's machine humming like a possessed fridge. Breathe steady. Clara, he said, his accent thick as borscht. You become him. He becomes. Nothing. Lights out. Wake up gasping. Staring at a ceiling painted like the Sistine Chapel. But all wrong. Masculine lines. A Rolex on my wrist that felt like a shackle. I was in Ethan's body.
Tall.
Lean. Reeking of Tom Ford cologne and entitlement. Mirror check. His face. Sharp jaw. Blue eyes that used to melt my heart.
Now?
They burned. First move. Cancel the party. Or rather, crash it harder. I stumbled into the brownstone, my brownstone, once dressed in his silk robe. The revelers parting like the Red Sea for their host. Ethan, a bleach blonde in a bandage dress, squealed, draping herself over me. I shrugged her off, voice cracking in his baritone. Party's over. Get the fuck out. Gasps. Whispers. Is he okay? Too much blow. But they scattered like roaches when I flipped the lights and yanked the sound system cord. Alone in the echoing foyer, I poured myself a scotch, Daddy's brand, and toasted to ghosts. To family, I muttered, the liquor sliding down like liquid fire. It tasted different in this throat. Sharper. Like betrayal seasoned with privilege. That night, I rifled through his office. Drawers full of coke vials, burner phones, and the real prize, a USB drive labeled Hargrove Legacy. Plugged into his laptop, password was my birthday, the bastard, and there it was. Emails to Harlan the lawyer. Make it airtight. Mom gets scraps. Second will? Incinerate. And photos, grainy shots of Daddy's last hours. Him slumped in the armchair. A syringe glinting on the side table. Insulin overdose. Masked as heart failure. Ethan's prints all over it. The secret he'd buried? Not just murder. Daddy wasn't his father. A fling in the 90s. Some intern named Lisa who'd vanished after a settlement. DNA test buried in the files. Stamped confidential. Ethan, the cuckoo in the nest, clawing for a throne that wasn't his. Rage boiled over. I wanted to scream, to shatter every vase Daddy had collected from dusty European attics. But no, this body was my weapon now. Controversial? Hell yes. Impersonating your own son to dismantle his empire from the inside? That's not revenge. That's resurrection. First decision, call Harlan.
Meeting.
Now. I barked into the phone, Ethan's voice dripping authority. The weasel showed up at dawn, sweating through his Brooks Brothers suit. Ethan.
Boy.
What's the fire? I leaned back in Daddy's leather chair, feet up like I owned the joint, which I did.
Technically.
The will. There's a second one. His eyes bulged. Impossible. We burned. I slid the USB across the desk. Back it up, or this goes to the DA. Your prints are on the syringe. Harlan. Diabetes meds don't OD like that. He folded like a cheap lawn chair, babbling about contingencies, a safe deposit box in Zurich. But I wasn't done. Next, the board. Ethan's calendar was packed. Merger talks with a Chinese conglomerate, the kind that'd gut American jobs for cheap labor. I crashed the Zoom from his Tribeca loft, face pixelated just enough to hide the tremor in my stolen hands. Deal's off, I announced, voice steady as a surgeon's scalpel. Hargrove's steel goes green, or goes under. Gasps from the suits in their corner offices. Ethan. What the hell? Your father's legacy, my legacy now. I cut in. And it doesn't include poisoning rivers for profit. Walked away from $200 million on the table. Controversial? The board called it insanity. The unions toasted me in dive bars.
Me?
I called it penance. But Ethan, my Ethan, trapped in my body. Probably waking up in that Queen studio with my aching knees and sagging skin. Wasn't idle. Reports trickled in from Victor's network, a frantic woman, looking like hell's own grandma, pounding on the brownstone door, screaming about identity theft. Cops dismissed her as a nut job, neighbors pegged her for a squatter. I laughed, dark, hollow, in his shower, steam clouding the marble. But laughter died when the call came. Harlan. Voice quivering. She's here. In your office. Demanding a reversal.
Shit.
The 72 hours were ticking, 48 left. I raced back, bursting in to find me, rifling drawers. Wild-eyed. My own face twisted in fury. Give it back.
You bitch.
This is mine. We stared. Me in his suit. Him in my muumuu. Mirror images from a funhouse nightmare. Ethan, I whispered, his voice soft now, laced with maternal ache. You killed him. For what? A lie? He lunged, my arthritic hands clawing at his, my throat. You were always weak.
Mom. Dad chose me.
The money. The power. It's blood right. We grappled, vases shattering like dreams, until I pinned him down, his breath ragged in my lungs. Blood? You're not even his. The words hung. A guillotine blade. I showed him the files. The DNA report fluttering like a white flag. His face crumpled, my face, etched with decades of quiet suffering.
No. Lisa?
That whore. Sobs racked him, ugly and raw. For a heartbeat, pity flickered. This was my boy, broken by the same monster who'd broken me. But pity's a luxury for the living. I zip-tied his wrists with his own Hermes belt, poetic. That, and dialed Victor. Extraction.
Now.
As the van screeched up, Ethan thrashed. You'll rot for this. Fraud. Assault. I'll bury you. I knelt, brushing a lock from my forehead, the gesture achingly familiar. You already did, sweetheart. But graves? They have a way of digging themselves up. The swap reversed in that fetid warehouse. Nanites unraveling like a bad knit. I woke in my body, joints screaming, but free.
Ethan?
He came to ranting. But the cops were waiting. Harlan's confession on tape. The second will unearthed from Zurich. Equal shares. My name first. With a codicil exposing the Ohio fire. Clara Hargrove. Vindicated. The headlines blared next week. The fallout hit like a nor'easter off the Atlantic, swift, brutal, and leaving nothing standing. Ethan lawyered up faster than you could say, motion to dismiss, holing up in a suite at the plaza with a team of sharks who'd make Jaws piss himself. Charges flew: identity fraud, assault, conspiracy. The DA's office, usually greased by Daddy's donations, suddenly grew a spine. Turns out, the second will came with teeth. Clauses that froze assets pending investigation and funneled whistleblower funds to victims' families. My modest trust multiplied overnight into a war chest. I hired my own pit bull, a no-nonsense broad from Brooklyn named Salma Ruiz, who chain-smoked Marlboros and quoted Miranda like scripture. They'll paint you as the vengeful hag. Clara, she warned over takeout lo mein in her walk-up. Body swap? Sounds like sci-fi bullshit. We lean into the betrayal. Son kills father. Frames mother. Jury eats that up. Public opinion? A circus. Tabloids splash my mug, haggard, defiant, next to Ethan's pretty boy glare. Headlines screaming, Mommy Dearest or Murder Plot? Fox News called me a radical feminist avenger, while CNN dissected the ethical quagmire of neural tech. Protests popped up outside the courthouse, blue-collar types from the Rust Belt waving signs, justice for the forgotten, clashing with Wall Street bros in Tom Ford suits chanting free enterprise. I became a meme, a hashtag, Steel Widow rises. Late-night hosts cracked jokes about trading places with your trust fund kid, but underneath, a vein of real rage. Women who'd been gaslit by exes, sidelined by sons climbing corporate ladders on their backs, they flooded my inbox. Stories pouring out like confessions in a blackout.
Me?
I holed up in a sublet in Cobble Hill, Brooklyn, brownstones with ivy and stoops where neighbors actually waved. No more Upper East Side isolation. This was gritty, alive. The kind of place where you could hear the F train rumble and smell fresh bagels from Essa Bagel at dawn. Nights were the worst. I'd jolt awake, sweating, feeling phantom itches where the nanites had burrowed, Ethan's cologne clinging to my pores, his heartbeat echoing in my chest. Was it guilt? Hell no. This was clarity, the sharp edge of survival. I'd borne his sins, daddies. Two for too long. The Ohio fire? I'd visited those widows once. Post-probation, bringing casseroles and apologies that tasted like ash. It wasn't you, Clara, one said, her hands gnarled from factory scars. It was the machine.
Now.
The second will's stipends would rebuild their lives, scholarships for grandkids, clinics in ghost towns. My revenge wasn't just personal, it was restitution. Ethan's countermove came sly, like a stiletto in the ribs. A leak to the Post. Hargrove heir claims maternal abuse, alcoholic rages, emotional terror. Bullshit. Of course, I'd been the soccer mom with minivans and bake sales. Not some Real Housewives villain. But it stuck. Whispers in the jury pool. Salma ripped it apart in pretrial motions, subpoenaing psych evals from his Ivy League days, coke binges, rage blackouts, a stint in rehab hushed with Daddy's checkbook. He's projecting. Your Honor, she drawled in court, her gold hoops glinting under the fluorescence. The apple didn't fall. It fermented. Judge, a grizzled Irishman named O'Malley with a Brooklyn accent thick as oatmeal, suppressed the leak. But the damage lingered. Ethan, pale and twitchy in his orange jumpsuit during video feeds, shot me looks that could curdle milk. You did this to us. Mom, he'd mouth.
Us.
As if we were still a team. Controversial decision number 2, the plea deal. Salma laid it out over diner coffee, steam curling like secrets. He flips on the Empire, full audit. Names dropped. You walk. He does 20 to life. My gut twisted. 20 years? For the boy who'd peed his pants at his first Broadway show. Who'd carved Mom plus E forever into our kitchen table. But then I flashed to Daddy's face. Slack and betrayed. The syringe glinting. To the widows. Their eyes hollow as gutted factories. Do it, I said, voice steady. No mercy. We met in a sterile conference room at Rikers. Plexiglass between us like the Berlin Wall. Ethan slouched, unshaven. His beauty cracked like cheap porcelain. You win, Clara. Happy. I press my palm to the glass. This isn't winning. It's justice. He laughed, bitter as quinine. Justice? You swapped into me. Live my life for a day. Felt the power? That's what Dad gave me, not you. With your frilly curtains and PDA bullshit. I leaned in, close enough to fog the barrier. Power? It's a noose. Ethan. And you're hanging yourself. The deal's stuck. Ethan sang like Sinatra. Harlan indicted for forgery. Board members scattering like pigeons. The Chinese merger torpedoed into antitrust hell. Hargrove Steel? Rebranded under my watch. Green tech. Union shops. A foundation for worker retraining that made headlines from Detroit to D.C. I cut the ribbon in Ohio. Hands shaking on the oversized scissors. Widows flanking me like sentinels. For the lost, I murmured into the mic. Cameras flashing like lightning. Backstage. One of them, Margaret. The one with the gnarled hands, squeezed my arm. You carried it alone too long.
Clara.
Let it go. But letting go? That's the real controversy. Forgiveness feels like surrender when the scars run bone deep. Twist crept in slow, like fog off the East River. Salma called late one night, voice hushed. Dig this, Lisa. The intern? She's alive. Nursing home in Sarasota. Dementia, but lucid spells. My heart stuttered. Ethan's mother? The ghost in the files? I flew down next week. Economy seat pinching my hips. Palms slick as I wheeled into the sun-bleached facility. She was tiny, bird-boned. Eyes milky, but sharp when they locked on mine. Richard, she whispered, clutching my hand.
No, ma'am. Clara.
Your rival, I guess. A smile cracked her lips, faint as a whisper.
He told me about you.
The good one. Kept the boy close when I couldn't. Stories tumbled out in fragments. Daddy's charm offensive. The pregnancy hushed with payoffs. Her exile to Florida with a settlement that bought silence but not peace.
Ethan?
Visits sporadic. Gifts lavish but cold. He hates me for leaving, she said. Tears carving tracks. But you fought for him.
Fought?
or destroyed. Back in Brooklyn, doubts gnawed like termites. The trial loomed, Ethan's sentencing in 2 weeks. A spectacle in federal court downtown. Protesters massed outside. Signs clashing. Lock him up versus family over fury. Pundits debated on MSNBC. Is Clara Hargrove a hero or a monster? Vigilante justice in the age of AI swaps. I watched from my stoop, nursing a gin and tonic. The cities hum a lullaby of chaos. Victor called then. Voice gravelly. Loose end.
Clara.
The exchange fed sniffing. One out.
Out.
As if there was an exit ramp from this highway to hell.
Burn it, I said.
All of it. Controversial? Torching evidence that could exonerate Ethan on the tech charge?
Yeah.
But some fires need stoking. The night before court, I dreamed of the swap, his body yielding to mine. Power flooding veins like heroin. Woke gasping. The brownstone's deed, now mine on the nightstand. A paper crown heavy as lead. Was this victory? Or just another betrayal? Me stepping into Daddy's shoes. Polished with blood? Sentencing day dawned gray and drizzly. The kind of Manhattan morning that soaks your soul before your socks. Federal Plaza loomed like a concrete monolith. Magnet for every camera crew from here to HBO. I slipped in the back. Salma at my elbow. Her perfume a mix of Chanel and cigarette ash. Chin up. Clara. This is your curtain call.
Inside.
The courtroom buzzed, reporters scribbling. Victims' families in the gallery. Their faces etched with the patient fury of the long grieving. Ethan shuffled in chains. A far cry from the golden boy who'd yachted in the Sound. His eyes found mine across the room. Not hate now, but something hollower, resignation. Maybe. Or the ghost of a plea. O'Malley banged the gavel. Voice booming off the oak panels. Ethan Hargrove. You've pled guilty to murder in the first. Fraud. And endangerment. The weight of your actions. It blurred after that. Legalese washing over me like tidewater. Evidence montaged in my head. The syringe. The forged will. The factory memos yellowed with age. Harlan took the stand first. Sniveling in a plea bargain suit. He coerced me. Your Honor. The boy, man, was ruthless. Ethan didn't flinch. Just stared at his shackled hands. The manicure chipped. Then the victims, Ohio widows. Union reps with gravel voices, testified. Each word a nail in his coffin. My husband burned for their profits, one said. Voice cracking. And she carried the blame. They nodded at me. A chorus of absolution. My turn came soft. Unscripted. Salma had prepped a statement, measured, dignified, but I crumpled it, standing on legs that felt borrowed. Ethan, I said, voice carrying like smoke. You were my everything. The boy who built forts in the living room, who cried when Bambi's mom died. I raised you to be better than him, better than the lies we lived. Gasps rippled. O'Malley leaned forward. Intrigued. But you chose the poison. Killed for a throne built on sand. And me, I swapped into you not for hate, but to feel what you'd become. The emptiness. The rot. Ethan looked up then. Eyes wet. Lips mouthing, Mom. Pity surged. Hot and treacherous. Controversial decision 3. Mercy. Sentence him.
Judge.
But know this, jail won't fix him. Only truth can. The gavel fell. Life. No parole. Cheers from the gallery. Flashbulbs popping like gunfire. Ethan was led away. Back straight. But his glance lingered, a boy's lost in a man's shell. Outside, rain slicked the steps, reporters swarmed, mics thrusting like bayonets. MS.
Hargrove.
Vigilante or victim? Will you forgive? I pushed through, Salma barking no comment, until we hit the sidewalk. City exhaling around us. You ad-libbed, she said, lighting up. Risky. I shrugged, rain beating on my coat. Truth's the real risk, but twists, as Victor would say, are Russian nesting dolls, one revelation birthing another. 2 days later, a package arrived at the brownstone, now mine again. Echoes haunting every hall. No return address. Just a manila envelope thick as guilt. Inside, a letter, Lisa's looping script, and a paternity test fresh, lab-stamped. Clara, it read, dementia lies, but memories don't. Richard wasn't the father. You were there that summer. The merger party. Too much wine and regret.
Ethan? Ours.
Hidden to protect the empire. Forgive an old ghost. My knees buckled. The paper fluttering to Persian rugs. Not daddy's cuckoo. Mine. Flesh of my flesh. Twice over, the swap not just theft, but reunion in the darkest way. The truth reversed everything. I'd avenged a lie, punished my own blood for sins we shared. Lisa passed that night, peaceful, they said. I flew down again, scattering her ashes in the Gulf, waves whispering absolution. Back home, the foundation thrived, Hargrove no more. But Clara's legacy. Factories humming with solar panels. Workers with pensions and pride. Ethan wrote from Sing Sing. Letters sparse. Understood the power now. The loneliness. Right back. I did. Once. Recipes for PBJ. Stories of forts and Bambi. No forgiveness, named, but threads mending. Slow as rust. Ending? You tell me. Heroic reclamation. Or tragic echo of the monster I slew. I walk the brownstone now. Ghosts companionable, daddy's cigars. Ethan's laughter faint as rain. The $55 million? Donated in chunks. Ripples feeding the forgotten.
Me?
I'm no avenger anymore. Just Clara. Steel rose bent but blooming. Thorns and all. In America, where dreams die hard and revenge tastes like ashes. Maybe that's the real inheritance, the choice to rise. Controversial as hell. From the grave you dug yourself. Debate it over beers in some dive, justice or madness. I won't judge. I've worn both skins.